Fog slicked the boards of Ethan Cole's dock and blurred Moosehead Lake into a sheet of black glass. Ethan stood with a mug of coffee, warming his palms, listening to the cabin behind him creak. Upstairs, Lily slept. Her nightlight left a thin stripe of gold under the door. A footstep clicked at the far end of the dock. Ethan turned. Claire. She stepped out of the haze, coat-buttoned, high blonde hair pale against the dark. Claire Hart stopped a few feet away, hands loose at her sides, face calm in a way that didn't belong after midnight. "Tonight," she said, "I ruin you." Ethan tried to laugh. It came out thin. "You're on my dock, saying that like it's nothing." Her eyes slid past him to the cabin window. "Your daughter's asleep." The warmth in his hands vanished. "Don't talk about her." Claire looked back at him. 15 years ago, I talked in a courtroom. I pointed at a man and helped lock him away. Ethan's mouth went dry. A flash of fluorescent lights, a witness stand, a name spoken like a hammer strike. "Mason," Ethan whispered. Claire nodded once. "Mason Cole, your brother." Ethan shifted back heel, catching on a wet plank. "What do you want from me?" She reached into her purse with maddening care. When her hand came out, she held a small plastic sleeve. Inside was a photograph, edges frayed. The image faded but sharp enough to sting. A boot print sunk into mud. A date scrawled in the corner. Ethan's pulse thudded. "Where did you get that?" Claire's fingers trembled on the plastic. "I've had it since the trial. I told myself I was waiting for the right time. And the right time is you ruining my life." Ethan's voice went rough. Claire swallowed. The calm in her face cracked. "I moved next door to hurt you. I thought your family took my sister and walked away clean." She glanced toward the cabin again. "Then I saw you carry Lily in when she fell asleep in the car. I saw you check her door like a ritual." A low engine rumbled somewhere up the gravel road, muffled by fog. Claire lifted the photo a little higher. "Let me inside Ethan, not out here." Ethan stared toward the trees, then at the thin gold line under Lily's door, then back at Claire. He set the mug down with a soft clink. "Fine," he said, "but you don't say her name again. If this pulled you in, tap, like, and subscribe. Before we continue, I would love to know where you are watching from. Drop your city or country in the comments." Ethan kept his body between Claire and the staircase as he stepped inside. He shut the door with a careful, quiet pull, then turned the deadbolt until it clicked. The sound felt too loud in the small cabin. Claire stood in the entryway, letting her eyes adjust. The place smelled like cedar and coffee and the faint sweetness of the shampoo Lily used. A pair of tiny sneakers sat by the baseboard, toes pointed toward the stairs as if Lily might run down at any second. Ethan lifted a finger to his lips, not for Claire, but for himself. He listened. Nothing but the soft hush of the heater and the lake wind brushing the windows. "Kitchen," he said. They moved through the narrow hall. Ethan flicked on the light over the sink, keeping the rest of the room dim. The table sat under the low lamp wood, worn smooth by years of elbows and homework pages. Claire set her purse down, like it weighed too much, then placed the plastic sleeve on the table with both hands. Ethan did not touch it at first. He pulled out a chair but did not sit. He stayed standing, braced with one palm on the chair back, eyes lifting now and then toward the ceiling. Claire noticed. "You check on her a lot." "I don't have the luxury of not checking," Ethan said. His voice stayed low. "You came onto my dock and said you were going to ruin me. Now you're in my kitchen. Start talking." Claire's gaze dropped to the photograph. Under the lamp, the boot print looked deeper, uglier. The date in the corner made Ethan's stomach tighten. He saw it, but his mind refused to accept it. "How long have you had this?" he asked. Claire swallowed. The skin at her throat moved like she was forcing down something sharp. "Since the trial." Ethan's hand tightened on the chair back. "You sat there and watched them take my brother away, and you had this the whole time." I didn't understand what I had Claire said. Not then. I thought it was one more thing that proved he did it. Ethan let out a short breath through his nose. It sounded almost like a laugh. A boot print proves murder now. It was never just the boot print. Claire's voice thinned, then steadied. It was everything they put in front of me. Photos, reports, a story that made sense if you wanted it to make sense. Ethan finally sat hard like gravity won. The chair scraped slightly on the floor. He hated that sound too. Claire did not sit right away. She stood at the end of the table, hands pressed to the wood as if she needed it to hold her up. "My sister Emma was 23, she said. She used to paint her nails in the kitchen and leave the little bottles open. The whole house would smell like chemicals for days." She laughed with her whole body. When she walked into a room, you felt it. Ethan watched her face. The calm mask from the dock was gone. Her eyes were bright, not with anger now, but with something raw and old. "She was found off Quarry Road," Claire continued. "Not far from the old logging trail. Somebody called it in. A hunter. They told my parents not to see her. They told me anyway. In a back room at the station, they slid photos across a metal table and watched my reaction like it was part of their report." Ethan's jaw tightened. He pictured Mason at 25, stubborn and loud, always the first to take the blame in a fight he did not start. He pictured Mason in a courtroom, shackles at his ankles. Claire took a shallow breath. Detective Calder was there. He was not chief then. He was the one who spoke the most. He had a way of saying things like he was doing you a favor. Like, "Look, I know this is hard, but you can help us. You can help your sister." Ethan's eyes narrowed. Calder. Claire flinched at the sound of the name on Ethan's tongue. "He told me they had the man who did it. He said Mason Cole had been seen near the trail. He said your brother had a temper, that he had a record. He said he had a reason." "What reason?" Ethan said sharp. Claire's cheeks flushed with shame. "He implied Emma knew him, that she rejected him, that he got angry." Ethan pushed his chair back an inch. "Emma didn't even know Mason. We lived 2 towns over back then. They never cared about what was true," Claire said. "They cared about what was useful." She finally sat, but on the edge of the chair, shoulders tight. She kept her hands folded in front of her as if she did not trust them to stay still. Ethan stared at the photograph again, then at Claire. "So, they coached you." Claire's eyes flicked to the window to the dark outside as if she expected to see someone listening. "They practiced with me. They told me what to say, and they corrected me when I said it wrong. They told me how to look at the jury. They told me where to pause, so it sounded like I was remembering, not repeating. They said, say it exactly like this. You saw him near the water line. He was sweating. He looked startled. He walked away fast." Ethan's mouth went dry. "You said those things." "I said them," Claire whispered. "And I believed I was doing the right thing. I wanted a reason my sister was gone. I wanted a name to pin it on, so I could wake up the next day and not feel like the world was random and cruel." Ethan's hands curled into fists on the table. He felt his pulse in his fingertips. He wanted to stand up and shout, but the ceiling above him held Lily, and the thought of waking her with his rage made him swallow it down like hot metal. "You moved next door," Ethan said. 6 months ago. Why?" Claire looked down at her folded hands. One thumb rubbed the other until the skin turned pink. "Because I found something." Ethan waited. She reached into her purse again and pulled out a thin folder, not the kind you buy in a store. This one had old punch holes and a stamp in faded ink, like it had been buried in a file cabinet for a decade and then dragged back into the light. She slid it across the table. "County records. Archive room at the courthouse. You can request old case documents if you know what to ask for. Most people never do." Ethan did not open it yet. "You went digging." "I went because the anniversary was coming," Claire said. "Because I kept having the same dream. Emma calling my name and me not answering. I thought if I looked at the case again, I would feel something like closure. Instead, I found a mistake." Her voice turned quieter, almost careful. There were 2 versions of the medical examiner's report. Ethan's breath caught. 2 versions. One said time of death was around 11, Claire said. The other pushed it closer to 1 in the morning. The second version was the one in the court file. The first was stored under a different index number, like someone didn't want it in the main stack. Ethan stared at her, trying to fit the pieces together. Mason had an alibi until midnight, he said mostly to himself. He remembered the night like a bruise. Mason had been at a bar with friends. A bartender swore to it. It didn't matter. Claire nodded once. I remembered that after I saw the first report. I remembered hearing it in court and watching the judge shut it down like it was nothing. Ethan's throat tightened. So you took copies. I took everything I could, Claire said. And I looked at what they used to sway me back then. They had shown me this boot print photo, told me it matched a boot your brother owned. I believed them. Ethan finally picked up the plastic sleeve. He held it under the lamp, angling it. How did you realize it wasn't his? Claire leaned forward, voice low. Because the print pattern is from a service boot sold to departments, not civilians. I only noticed because I started painting again, and I needed reference for textures. I was online searching for tread patterns like an idiot. I found the exact design in an old procurement catalog for law enforcement gear. Ethan's eyes narrowed. You're saying it belongs to a cop. I'm saying it could, Claire replied. She wet her lips. Then I found the property photos from the station open house, the ones they post for the newspaper. In one of them, Detective Calder is standing by a patrol car laughing. He has the boots on. The tread looked the same. Ethan's chest felt tight, like the air in the kitchen had turned heavier. Why not go straight to Sheriff Brooks with this? Claire's hands shook openly now. Because I tried to confront Calder first. Ethan looked up fast. Claire swallowed. I called him. I said I wanted to talk. He agreed to meet me in a parking lot by the courthouse like I was a suspect and he was still running the show. He listened while I talked. He did not deny anything. He just stared at me, then told me that accidents happen around lakes. Cars slip on winter roads. People fall down stairs. He said he hoped I was still enjoying my quiet life. Ethan felt cold, spread up his arms. He looked at the staircase again as if the steps themselves could betray him. Claire's voice roughened. I went home and checked every lock. I slept with a light on like a child. Then I started thinking about the Coles. I thought you knew. I thought your family had to know. I told myself you were living your life while mine was built on a lie. I wanted you to feel the same sickness I lived with. Ethan's eyes stung, but not with sympathy, with fury. So you picked me. I found your name on a property transfer, Claire said. The lake cabin. Cole, same last name. I drove up here and looked at the house from the road. I didn't know you. I didn't know about your wife. I didn't know about Lily. Ethan's face hardened at the mention of his wife, a wound reopened with a single word. He pushed it down. He could not afford to go there. Claire's gaze lifted toward the ceiling again, softer now. Then I saw you two at the store in Greenville. Lily was trying to carry a bag of apples bigger than her arms. You told her she was strong, and you let her struggle until she laughed. I watched you, and I hated you for being gentle. I hated it because it ruined the picture I needed. Ethan's voice went flat. You came to ruin me, and then you changed your mind. I came to make you hurt, Claire said. I told myself it would balance something, but I couldn't keep pretending I was righteous. Not after watching your daughter run across the yard to your dock like it was the safest place in the world. Ethan sat very still. The only sound was the heater and the faint tick of the kitchen clock. Upstairs, a floorboard popped a small, settling noise. Ethan's head snapped up. He listened hard. After a moment, he heard Lily's soft sigh and nothing else. Claire watched him, eyes glistening. I didn't plan to say it out there, she whispered. On the dock, I planned to do it quietly. Slide something into your mailbox. Leave a note. But you opened the door with a coffee mug like it was just another night, and I felt, I don't know, like I had to look you in the face. Ethan's fingers pressed into the folder on the table. He did not open it, but he could feel the paper inside the weight of it. 15 years. His brother's missing life. His own stubborn belief that maybe somehow the court had been right. "Say his name again," Ethan said, voice tight. Mason Clare replied. "What did you see?" Ethan asked. Claire's brow furrowed. "That night, in your own eyes," Ethan said. "Not what they told you. Not what you repeated. What did you actually see?" Claire stared at the tabletop as if the wood grain held an answer. "I saw headlights," she said slowly. "I saw a figure near the trail. It was dark. I could not see a face. I heard a car door shut. Then I heard someone say my name, but I don't know if it was real or my brain trying to make sense of panic." Ethan's stomach churned, and they turned that into Mason. "Yes," Claire said, barely audible. "They gave me a face to put on the shadow." Ethan leaned back, chair creaking. He pressed a hand to his mouth, feeling the edges of his control fray. His gaze went to the window again. The fog outside looked thicker now, pressed against the glass like breath. A sharp knock struck the front door. Ethan froze. Claire's eyes snapped toward the entryway, wide and bright with fear. The knock came again, harder, confident, like whoever stood outside expected to be let in. Ethan did not move right away. His eyes stayed on the front door, as if it might swing open on its own. The second knock landed with the same steady force, patient and certain. Claire's shoulders rose toward her ears. The folder on the table sat between them like a live wire. Ethan lifted a hand palm down, a silent order to stay quiet. He crossed the kitchen in socked feet, careful on the floorboards that liked to complain. At the entryway he paused and listened again. A male voice carried through the wood, calm and official. "Mr. Cole. Ethan Cole." Ethan's stomach tightened. He eased the deadbolt open, leaving the chain latched, and cracked the door just enough to see a face in the porch light. Sheriff Nolan Brooks stood there, hat in hand, breath faint in the cold. His uniform looked damp at the cuffs. His eyes flicked over Ethan's shoulder, taking in the dim cabin beyond. "Sheriff," Ethan said, "it's late." "I know." Brooks's voice stayed low, practiced. "Sorry to bother you at this hour." Ethan kept his grip on the door. "Is something wrong?" Brooks lifted his chin toward the woods, then back to Ethan. "I need to speak with you about Mason." The name hit like a shove. Ethan felt his pulse jump in his throat. He did not step aside. He did not widen the opening. "I haven't seen him," Ethan said. Brooks watched him for a beat, like he was measuring the truth by the way Ethan stood. "May I come in for a minute?" Ethan hesitated. Behind him, the heater clicked. Somewhere upstairs, Lily shifted in her sleep. He pictured her hair fanned across the pillow, the small rise and fall of her chest. He pictured the last time he had heard Mason's laugh years ago, before all of it went wrong. Ethan unhooked the chain and opened the door wider. "Keep your voice down," he said. "My daughter's asleep." Brooks stepped inside and took off his hat, holding it against his thigh. He did not remove his boots. He looked like a man who had already walked through enough mud and did not want to pretend otherwise. "Thanks," Brooks said. His gaze moved past Ethan, and he saw the kitchen light. For half a second, his eyes caught on Claire's silhouette at the table. Ethan's spine tightened. He angled his body to block the line of sight. "What is this about?" Brooks's eyes returned to Ethan's face. Mason escaped. Ethan's breath stalled. Escaped from where? During transfer, Brooks said. They were moving him from holding to a transport unit. There was an incident on the road near the county line. 2 officers down, not dead, injured. Mason ran. Ethan's mouth went numb. He forced words out. "That makes no sense. Mason's been inside 15 years. He wouldn't just." Brooks's expression did not change, but something in his eyes softened. "I'm not here to argue what you think your brother would do. I'm here because we have reason to believe he might come here." Ethan's hands went cold. "Why here?" Brooks exhaled through his nose. "It's your property. It's remote. It's a place he knows. People run toward what feels familiar. Ethan glanced toward the staircase again, quick and involuntary. Brooks noticed. You said you have a daughter, Brooks continued. Lily Wright. Ethan nodded once. Brooks lowered his voice even more. I need you to take this seriously. Keep your doors locked. Call us if you see anything. Do not try to handle it on your own. Ethan swallowed. Did he say he was coming here? No, Brooks said. But a trooper found tire tracks near a turnout not far from the lake road. We also have an old address of yours in the file. That cabin, you. Claire shifted at the table, a faint scrape of chair legs. Brooks's head turned again sharper this time. Ethan stepped in quickly. Sheriff, there's something I need to ask you. Not here. Brooks's gaze went back to Ethan. You have company. Ethan did not answer right away. He could feel Claire's eyes on his back. He could feel the folder on the table like it was burning through the wood. Brooks took a slow step toward the kitchen, and Ethan moved with him, staying close, steering him away from the table without touching him. They stopped at the edge of the light. Claire sat very still, hands folded. Her face was pale, but her eyes held steady. She looked like she had been bracing for this exact moment for years. Brooks studied her for a second. Ma'am. Claire's throat worked. Sheriff. Ethan cut in. Claire is my neighbor. Brooks did not look away from her. Hart, he said, reading the name off her face as if he recognized it from a file. Claire Hart. Claire's fingers tightened together. Ethan saw her nails press into her skin. Brooks finally looked at Ethan again. That makes the situation more complicated than I like. Ethan heard the warning in the words. He also heard something else. Curiosity. She's here because Ethan started, then stopped. He did not know how to say it without detonating everything in the room. Claire spoke before he could find a safer lie. Sheriff, I have information about the old case. Brooks went still. The case that put Mason Cole away. Claire nodded. Ethan's heart hammered. He glanced toward the stairs again as if Lily might appear at the top step, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Brooks's voice tightened. Now is not the time for that. It is, Claire said, and the words came out sharper than she probably intended. She softened her tone on the next breath. I understand you have an active situation, but what I have is connected to why he ran, or why someone says he ran. Brooks's eyes narrowed. What are you saying? Claire reached toward the folder. Ethan shot her a look. Stop. Not yet, not while a badge stood between them and the night. Claire's hand hovered, then retreated to her lap. I'm saying I may have been wrong, back then, about what I saw, about what I was told. Brooks looked between them. His jaw flexed once. If you have something, bring it to the station in the morning. Ethan shook his head. Sheriff, you just told me my brother's out there. Morning might not be. He stopped himself, throat tight, careful not to finish the thought. Brooks watched him. Do you know where Mason is? No, Ethan said, and this time the word came out like a plea and a warning at the same time. I haven't talked to him in years. Brooks's gaze dropped to the table. Not the folder, not yet, but the way Claire sat, the way Ethan stood like a wall. Brooks had seen families in crisis before. He knew the shape of secrets. He took a small step back, giving them space. Listen to me, he said, voice firm. We're patrolling the lake road. I've got deputies covering the turnoffs. If Mason shows up, you call me. You do not negotiate. You do not try to talk him down. You do not put your daughter in the middle of it. Ethan's chest felt tight. What if he comes for me? Brooks's eyes held his. Then you keep yourself alive. You keep Lily safe. That's your job. Claire's voice cracked on the edge of a whisper. Sheriff, he didn't do it. Brooks's face did not change, but something flickered behind his eyes. A doubt that had been sitting there a long time. You don't know what he did, Brooks said quietly. Claire lifted her chin. I know what I did. Silence spread through the kitchen. The heater clicked again. Outside, the lake wind pressed against the window like a hand. Brooks put his hat back on. "I'm going to have a unit sit closer to your road for the rest of the night," he said to Ethan. "If you think of anything that helps us locate him, call me." Ethan nodded without trusting his voice. Brooks turned toward the door, then paused, looking at Claire once more. "If you are holding evidence," he said, "do not lose it. Do not destroy it. And do not let anyone else get to it." Claire's eyes widened, and for a second Ethan saw fear move across her face like a shadow. She nodded once. Brooks stepped out into the fog. The porch light swallowed him, then the night swallowed the rest. Ethan locked the door behind him and slid the deadbolt home with a hard, final click. He stood with his forehead against the wood for a beat, breathing through his nose. Then he turned. Claire was already on her feet. "He suspects something," she said. Ethan's voice came out low and tight. "You need to leave, right now." Claire's eyes flashed. "And go where?" "Anywhere that isn't here," Ethan said. He kept his voice down, but every word felt like it could break something. "My daughter is upstairs. My brother is out there. You walked into my life with a threat and a folder, and now the sheriff is on my doorstep." Claire stepped closer to the table, placing one hand on the folder like she was claiming it. "If I leave, he finds you without the truth." Ethan shook his head. "That truth can wait." Claire's face hardened. "It cannot. He spent 15 years believing I chose to lie. If he sees me anywhere near you, he will think the worst. He will not stop to ask why." Ethan opened his mouth, then closed it. He pictured Mason's temper the way it used to flare when he felt cornered. He pictured Mason's hands, big and scarred, clenched around a steering wheel. He pictured those same hands in cuffs. Claire's voice softened. "I did something unforgivable. I know that. But I am not leaving you to face him alone when I am part of why he is out there." Ethan's gaze flicked to the stairs again. He lowered his voice to a whisper. "Lily is all I have." Claire looked at him for a long moment, then nodded like she understood the weight of that sentence. "Then let me help you keep her safe," she said. "Let me help you stop this from turning into something worse." Ethan stood in the dim kitchen, the air thick with coffee and cedar and old ghosts. He did not answer. He only listened to the quiet house and the wind outside, trying to tell the difference between a normal night and a night that could fracture everything he had left. Ethan stood in the dim kitchen long after the sheriff's footsteps faded into the fog. The heater ticked. The clock over the sink clicked toward 4. Claire stayed near the table, one hand resting on the folder as if she could keep it from slipping out of the world. Ethan rubbed his face, then looked up at the ceiling again. "If she wakes up and sees a stranger in the house," he whispered, "she's going to scream." "I can wait outside," Claire said. "No," he shook his head once. "Outside is worse." Claire did not argue. She only nodded like she was swallowing words that would not help. Ethan watched her for a beat and realized she was shivering. Not from cold, from the weight of being here. He walked to the living room window and pulled the curtain back an inch. Fog pressed against the glass. The porch light made the air look thick and white like smoke that refused to drift away. His truck sat in the driveway, dark and still. Beyond it, the pine trees were silhouettes upright and silent. "You said you can help," Ethan murmured, letting the curtain fall. "Then help me do the one thing that matters." Claire's voice came soft. "Lily." Ethan nodded. "She can't be here. Not tonight. Not with Mason out there and deputies driving around and you holding a folder that could get someone killed." Claire's eyes flicked to the folder. Calder already threatened me. Ethan's jaw tightened, and he could threaten her without even speaking. A floorboard creaked upstairs. Both of them froze, listening hard. Ethan held his breath until the house settled again into quiet. "I'm taking her to town at first light," Ethan said. "To my wife's parents, Tom and Marjorie. They'll keep her. They'll lock their doors. They'll listen to the sheriff." Claire's lips parted. "Will they answer the phone this early?" "They will if I keep calling," Ethan said. He moved quickly but quietly. He grabbed his phone and stepped into the hallway where the signal was better, then dialed. It rang and rang. On the third call, a sleepy voice answered. Ethan, Marjorie Keene, sounded alarmed, awake in an instant. Is Lily all right? Ethan lowered his voice. She's sleeping. I need you to do something for me. I need you to take her for a while. Silence, then a shift of sheets through the speaker. What's happened? There's a situation, Ethan said. He chose the words like he was walking across ice. Mason escaped during transfer. The sheriff thinks he might come here. A sharp inhale. Oh my God. I'm bringing Lily to you as soon as the sun's up, Ethan said. Please, just open the door. No questions in front of her. Marjorie did not hesitate. Bring her. Tom will make coffee. We will be ready. Ethan closed his eyes for a moment. Thank you. When he ended the call, his hands shook. Not the jittery tremble of fear alone, but the strain of holding everything together so nothing spilled onto the child upstairs. He went back to the kitchen. Claire watched him, her face searching. They'll take her, Ethan said. Claire nodded once. Good. Ethan pulled a small duffel from a cabinet in the hall and set it on the table, careful not to touch the folder. He opened a drawer and started gathering what mattered with the speed of a man who had packed in emergencies before. Extra clothes, socks, Lily's inhaler with her name written in marker, the small pouch of hair ties he had learned to keep because no one should have to face a bad hair day at school when life was already hard. Claire reached for the duffel zipper, then stopped, waiting for permission. Ethan glanced at her. Pack her pajamas. The blue ones with the sailboats. Claire stood and moved toward the stairs with light steps as if she knew every creak could be a siren. Ethan watched her go, then turned back to the bag. He found Lily's favorite stuffed rabbit on the couch and hesitated, then tucked it into the duffel. He would rather carry an extra pound of softness than face her tears when she realized it was missing. Claire returned a minute later, holding the pajamas and a small folded blanket. She set them into the bag without speaking. Her hands were steadier now. Focus had replaced panic the same way it does when you finally accept there is no safe option, only action. Ethan zipped the duffel and set it by the door. They waited in the living room as the night thinned toward morning. Ethan sat on the edge of the couch, elbows on his knees, listening for every sound outside. Claire sat in the armchair by the window, the folder on her lap, now both hands around it. At one point, Ethan caught himself staring at her hair, the pale strand that had fallen across her cheek. He looked away immediately, disgusted with his own wandering mind. This was not the time for softness. This was the time for survival. He heard a distant car on the lake road, tires whispering on wet gravel, then fading. He heard the heater kick on again. He heard the house settle and groan like it had bones. When the sky finally began to lighten behind the trees, Ethan stood. Now he whispered. Claire rose too. Do you want me to stay here? Ethan thought of the folder, thought of Calder's name, thought of a man with power and boots that might match a print in the mud. No, Ethan said. You stay where I can see you. He went upstairs first. The air was cooler on the second floor. Lily's door stood slightly ajar. Ethan pushed it open with 2 fingers and stepped inside. Lily was curled on her side hair, a dark spill across her pillow, one knee tucked up like she was mid-dream sprint. Her rabbit was missing from the bed now, replaced by the empty space where Ethan had taken it. He felt a pinch of guilt and shoved it away. He would give it back in a moment. He crouched beside her and brushed a knuckle along her cheek. Lil, he whispered. Hey, Peanut. She stirred a small frown forming. Dad, I need you to wake up for me, he said softly. We're going to Grandma Marjorie's for breakfast. Her eyes cracked open. Why? Because she makes the good pancakes, he said. Lily's gaze drifted toward the window where the sky was turning gray. It's not breakfast time. Ethan forced a small smile. It can be. She yawned wide, then rubbed her eyes with both fists. Are you coming? In a little bit, Ethan said. He kept his voice steady. I'll be right behind you. Lily sat up slowly. Her hair stuck out in a wild halo. Ethan handed her the rabbit from behind his back. Her face relaxed as she hugged it tight. Claire appeared in the doorway, careful, quiet. Lily blinked at her. That's Miss Hart, Lily, mumbled half asleep. Claire's eyes softened. Morning, Lily. Lily squinted. It's not morning. Claire gave the smallest hint of a smile. It's almost. Ethan helped Lily into a sweatshirt and jeans, then slid her sneakers onto her feet. Her fingers were clumsy with sleep as she tied the laces badly. Ethan corrected them without a word. Downstairs, the cabin felt different in the gray light. Less like a hiding place, more like a stage. The fog outside had thinned, but not disappeared. It hovered over the yard like something undecided. Ethan lifted the duffel and opened the front door. Cold air rushed in. Shoes on the mat, he told Lily, a reflex from 100 mornings. "I have shoes," Lily said, offended, then yawned again and shuffled onto the porch. Claire followed behind, holding the folder inside her coat like it was a fragile animal. Ethan guided Lily down the porch steps and toward the truck. The gravel was wet underfoot. Lily dragged her rabbit along the path like a tired flag. Halfway to the truck, headlights flared through the trees at the end of the driveway. Ethan stopped so fast, Lily bumped into his leg. A vehicle rolled in slowly, engine low. The lights swept across the yard, across the cabin, across Ethan's face. Ethan raised a hand to shield Lily's eyes. The vehicle came to a stop near the truck. The driver's door opened. A man stepped out. He was thinner than Ethan remembered, shoulders, sharper hair cut short and uneven like it had been done without a mirror. He moved with a stiffness that spoke of long hours in cramped spaces. His face looked older in the wrong ways, carved by fluorescent light and hard sleep. He closed the door softly, then turned toward Ethan. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. The morning held its breath, Ethan, the man said. His voice was rough, sanded down by years. Long time. Ethan's throat tightened until it hurt. He could not make sound at first. His brother's name rose in his mind like a shout. Mason, Ethan managed. Lily looked up at Ethan, confused. "Dad, who is that?" Ethan did not answer her. His eyes stayed locked on Mason. Mason took a step forward, then another. His gaze flicked to Lily, then back to Ethan with something like wonder and pain crossing his face. He started to speak, then stopped as a movement behind Ethan caught his attention. Claire stepped onto the porch. Mason's eyes narrowed. The air seemed to change as if the temperature dropped a few degrees. He stared at Claire for a long second, then recognition hit him hard. It tightened his jaw, darkened his stare, pulled his posture into something defensive and ready. "You," Mason said. The word came out like a bruise pressed too hard. Claire did not flinch. She stood still, shoulders squared, hands visible at her sides, the folder hidden beneath her coat, but not forgotten. Ethan moved instinctively, shifting Lily behind him, one hand spreading out as if he could block the past from colliding with the present. Mason's right hand drifted toward the front of his jacket. Ethan's heart kicked against his ribs as Lily's small fingers curled around the back of his shirt. Mason's hand stayed inside his jacket for a beat too long. Ethan felt his own hand lift without thinking, palm out a silent stop. He kept Lily tight behind his leg. Her fingers pinched the fabric of his shirt, small and warm, and that warmth made the cold in his chest feel sharper. "Mason," Ethan said, steadying his voice like he was setting a glass on a table. "Don't." Mason looked at him, then at Lily. His eyes flickered with something that did not fit the posture of a man on the run. Not softness exactly, more like shock, as if he had walked into the wrong life. "I'm not here for her," Mason said. His hand came out of his jacket. Not a gun, a crumpled rectangle of paper, folded and unfolded so many times it had lost its shape. Mason smoothed it once with his thumb, then held it up between them. It was an obituary clipping. Yellowed edges torn from a local paper. A young woman's photo printed in grainy ink. Emma Hart. Ethan's breath left his lungs in a thin line. Lily leaned around Ethan's hip, squinting. "That's a lady," she said, as if naming what she saw could make it less strange. Mason's voice scraped as he spoke. "I carried this every day, in my sock, in my Bible when they gave me one, in the seam of my mattress when they searched my bunk." He looked at Claire without blinking. "They said I killed her. They took my whole life for it. I did not kill her." His jaw flexed hard. "But I mourned her anyway, because somebody had to." Claire's face broke open. The rigid control she had worn like armor slipped off. Tears pooled and spilled quick and quiet down the sides of her nose. "I know," she whispered. Mason took a step forward. Ethan moved with him, blocking instinctively. Mason stopped, eyes shifting to Ethan. "I came to see my brother," Mason said. "I didn't know she was here." Ethan nodded once. "Neither did I until last night." Lily's rabbit dragged along the wet gravel. She lifted it, then hugged it to her chest as if it could protect her from grown-up voices. Ethan crouched slightly, keeping his body turned toward Mason while he spoke to Lily. "Sweetheart, get into the truck. Passenger seat. Buckle up and lock the door. Keep the rabbit with you." Lily frowned. "But pancakes." "I know," Ethan said. He forced his face into calm. "I just need you to sit for a minute." She looked from Ethan to Mason, then up at Claire on the porch. Lily's eyes narrowed like she was doing math. "Are you in trouble?" she asked. Ethan's throat tightened. "No, just listen to me." Lily climbed into the truck without arguing further, still watching through the open door like she did not trust the world to stay where it belonged. Ethan closed it gently. He waited until he saw her small hands lock the door. Only then did he turn back. Mason's gaze followed the truck, then returned to Ethan. "You got a kid," he said, and the words came out like he was testing them. "You got a whole kid," Ethan swallowed. "Her name's Lily." Mason stared at the cabin. Dad would have lost his mind. Ethan's eyes stung at the mention of their father gone now, buried with the weight of believing one son was a murderer and the other had abandoned him. Claire took a slow step down from the porch. Her hands were empty and visible. "Mason," she said. Mason flinched at his name in her mouth. His shoulders rose, then hardened. "Don't," he growled. "Don't say it like you have any right." "I don't," Claire said. Her voice shook, but she did not back away. "I don't have a right to anything from you." Mason's hand tightened around the obituary clipping until the paper bent. "Then why are you here?" Claire looked at Ethan, then back at Mason. "Because I was wrong. Because I helped them. And because I found something that changes what I thought I knew." Mason's eyes narrowed, a little late for that. Ethan stepped in low and tight. "She has documents." Mason's gaze snapped to Ethan. "You trust her?" "No," Ethan said. "I trust paper more than memory." Mason let out a rough sound that might have been a laugh, but it died fast. His eyes moved to the trees, to the lake beyond the cabin, like he was checking for deputies in every shadow. Then he looked back at Ethan, and some of the heat in his face shifted into something tired. "Get her inside," Mason said, nodding once toward Claire. "Get all of it inside. I want to see what she brought before I decide what to do with her." Claire held still, accepting the ugliness of that sentence like she deserved it. Ethan opened the cabin door and stepped back, letting Mason go in first. Mason scanned the room fast, eyes sharp, noting windows, the angle of the hall, the stairs. Ethan felt the old familiarity of Mason's protective habits, the brother who always checked exits at restaurants, always parked where he could see the street. Claire followed, wiping her cheeks with the back of her hand. Ethan shut the door and slid the deadbolt. The click felt like an admission. In the kitchen, morning light made the table look harmless. It was not. Ethan pulled the chair out for Mason, then sat across from him. Claire stood at the end of the table, not taking a seat as if she did not deserve the comfort of one. Mason put the obituary down between them. Ethan's eyes went to it, then to Mason's hands. Those hands were scarred, now knuckles thickened. Ethan tried not to picture what had done that to him. Claire set the folder on the table and opened it. Her fingers paused for a second, then she pushed through the pause like a door. "There are two versions of the medical examiner report," she said. The one used in court placed Emma's death later. It erased your alibi. Mason's eyes sharpened. "My alibi never mattered to them." "It would have mattered if the time was honest," Claire said. She slid a copy across the table. Mason read it like he was starving. His eyes moved fast, then slowed, then stopped. His jaw tightened. He looked up. "Where did you get this?" "From the courthouse archive," Claire said. There was a second index number, like somebody wanted it buried. Mason's gaze dropped back to the paper. His throat moved when he swallowed. 15 years, he muttered, not looking at either of them. 15 years because of a number in a file drawer. Ethan felt his stomach twist. He had spent years telling himself there had to be a reason that the system did not just destroy a man for nothing. The paper on the table laughed at that belief without making a sound. Claire pulled out the photograph in the plastic sleeve and placed it beside the report. The boot print, the date, the mud. Mason stared at it. "They showed me this in court," he said. "They said it matched my boots. I never owned boots like that." "I believed them," Claire whispered. Mason's eyes lifted sharp as a blade. "You believed them enough to point at me." Claire flinched but did not deny it. "Yes." Silence held for a moment. Then Mason's voice came lower, rougher. "I want names." Claire nodded. Detective Grant Calder. Ethan watched Mason's face change, not with recognition at first, but with calculation. The name did something to him. It landed heavy. Mason leaned back slightly. "Calder worked my case," he said. He smiled at me like he already knew how it ended. "He is not a detective now," Claire said. "He is chief in Rockland County. He has people. He has friends in places you cannot reach from a cell." Mason's hands curled around the edge of the paper. "He is the one who did it." Claire's voice trembled. "I believe he did. I believe he planted evidence and pushed the story toward you. And I believe he used me to make it stick." Mason stared at her. "Believe." Claire took a breath, then reached deeper into the folder. She pulled out a printed photo taken at a station event. People in uniform smiling beside a patrol car. Claire tapped the lower half of the image. "Look at his boots," she said. Mason leaned forward. Ethan leaned too. The tread, even in the photo, looked similar, a repeating pattern that caught the eye once you knew to look. Mason's nostrils flared. He sat back hard. The chair legs scraped. "That is not proof," he said, but his voice had changed. It was not dismissal. It was fear of hoping. Claire nodded quickly. "I know. That is why I kept digging." "There is also a Polaroid." Ethan's head snapped up. He had not heard that part yet. Claire pulled a small square photo from the folder. The colors were washed, the edges curled. It showed a smear of mud near the logging trail, a faint impression in it, and near the corner a reflective glint that could have been a badge or a button. The image was not clean. It was enough to make your skin prickle. "I found it in a box marked Miss," Claire said. "It was never entered as evidence." Mason stared at it, breathing slowly through his nose. His eyes were wet now, but he did not let the tears fall. He looked at Ethan, and Ethan saw something in his brother he had not seen since they were kids, a kind of naked disbelief. "I did not do it," Mason said, again quieter this time, like he was trying the truth out loud in a world that had never allowed it. "I did not do it." Ethan's voice came rough. "I know." Mason's eyes snapped back. "You know now," he said. "You did not know when they sentenced me." Ethan's stomach clenched. "No." Mason looked away, jaw tight, then forced his gaze back to the table. He pressed his palm flat over the obituary covering Emma's photo. "And what about her?" he said, voice low. "What about the girl whose name they used to bury me?" Claire's shoulders trembled. "I want her truth back," she said. "I want my sister's death to belong to what happened, not to what they made it." Mason's eyes moved to her face, searching for a lie. He did not find a convenient one. Outside, a crow called from the trees. Ethan heard the sound and thought of Lily in the truck alone with her rabbit, watching the cabin like it was a TV show she did not understand. Ethan stood and crossed to the front window. He pulled the curtain back a finger's width. Lily sat still, buckled in face, turned toward the house. When she saw Ethan at the window, her hand lifted in a small wave. Ethan's chest tightened. He waved back, then let the curtain fall. When he turned, Mason was watching him. "You got everything," Mason said. "A kid, a home, a lake." His voice broke on the last word, not loudly, but enough to hurt. "And I got years of metal and concrete." Ethan held his gaze. "I lost things too." Mason's eyes flashed, not like me. Claire stepped forward, voice careful. Mason, I cannot give you those years. I cannot undo what I did. I can only put what I have in your hands and stand where you tell me to stand. Mason's fingers brushed the edge of the Polaroid. His hand shook just once. He looked at Ethan again. If Calder is chief, he said, then he can reach us. Ethan nodded. He already reached her. Claire's eyes closed briefly. When she opened them, they were steady. He told me accidents happen around lakes, she said. He meant it. Mason's gaze went toward the window, toward the water beyond it. His shoulders tightened as if he could feel the lake watching. Then he looked back at the table, back at the papers, back at the name printed on the report. Grant Calder, Mason said again, slower tasting it. All right. Ethan did not like the way his brother said it. Not because it sounded like rage, but because it sounded like focus. Claire's hand lifted and rested lightly on the folder, not claiming it this time, but offering it. You are not alone in this, she said. Mason stared at her hand, then at her face. He did not forgive her. He did not soften. But he did not shove the folder away either. Ethan heard the heater click on, and in that small mechanical sound he felt the cabin return to its narrow reality. 3 adults around a table, a child outside in a locked truck, and a truth on paper that could pull a powerful man down or get them all hurt. Mason reached for the folder at last, pulled it closer, and began reading again with the intensity of someone trying to reclaim his name one line at a time. Mason read until his lips moved without sound. He traced lines with a fingertip, as if the paper could slip away if he did not hold it in place. Ethan watched his brother's eyes flick from sentence to sentence, then stop on the same section again and again. When Mason finally looked up, his face had changed. The anger was still there, but it sat deeper now, packed under something heavier. Time of death, Mason said. They pushed it later. Claire nodded. The first report places it closer to 11. The court file version drifts it toward 1. Mason stared at Ethan. Where were you that night? Ethan swallowed. At home. I was 19. Mom was on my case about college applications. Mason came by late, angry about something, then left for the bar. Mason's jaw worked. I did go to the bar. I was there. People saw me. I know, Ethan said. He heard his own voice strain on the last word. I told them. Mason's eyes sharpened. You told them? Ethan's throat tightened. I tried. They did not listen. Or they pretended not to. Mason looked down again, then tapped the medical report. If the time is 11, I am still at the bar. Claire's fingers hovered over the paper, as if she wanted to push it closer to him to make it more real. That is why it matters. Mason's gaze went flat. It always mattered. They just did not want it to. Ethan leaned forward, palms on the table. We need to put this in front of someone who can act. Mason's eyes lifted wary. And who is that? Ethan held his brother's stare. Sheriff Brooks. Mason's mouth twisted. A badge is a badge. Claire spoke softly. He is not Calder. Mason's eyes flicked to her. You said that once about Calder, did you not? Claire flinched, but she did not turn away. Yes. Silence pressed in, then Ethan broke it by opening a drawer and pulling out a legal pad and a pen. He set them on the table and pushed them toward Mason. We rebuild it, Ethan said. Minute by minute if we have to. Mason looked at the pad like it was a strange object. I rebuilt it 1,000 times in my head. Then put it on paper, Ethan replied. Let it live outside your skull for once. Mason hesitated, then took the pen. His hand shook slightly as he wrote the date at the top. The scratch of ink on paper sounded loud in the quiet cabin. Claire leaned in, careful not to crowd him. Start with where you were before the bar. Mason's eyes unfocused as he reached backward through years. I was at the shop, he said. My boss had me closing. I left around 8, went home, showered, changed, drove to the harbor tap. Ethan watched his brother's face as he spoke. Mason was seeing it again. Ethan could tell by the way his eyes tracked something that was no longer in the room. What time did you leave the tap? Claire asked. Mason swallowed. After midnight, around 12:30, maybe a little later. I remember because they put Last Call on the jukebox and someone played that old Springsteen song that always made me want to fight. Ethan felt a bitter tug in his chest. Mason had always had too much feeling inside him for a small town to hold. Claire nodded. The first report locks time of death closer to 11. Mason wrote it down. He pressed the pen hard enough to leave an indentation. Ethan leaned over the pad. Then they needed the second report. Mason's voice dropped. They needed it, so they made it. Claire's fingers tightened around the edge of the folder. They also needed me. Mason did not look up. They got you. Ethan's mind flashed to Claire's words from the night before. The way she described rehearsed pauses and coached phrases. It made his skin crawl to imagine a courtroom built like a stage, a life decided by performance. Ethan pointed at the boot print photo. This was their anchor. Mason glanced at it. They said it matched my boot size. I told them I wore sneakers most of the time. They acted like that was suspicious. Claire leaned forward. I found a newspaper photo from a station event. Calder was wearing boots with similar tread. Mason's eyes narrowed. Similar is not enough. I know, Claire said. That is why I kept looking. She pulled out a small plastic bag from the folder. Inside was a copy of an old receipt, the kind printed on thin paper that fades with time. Claire placed it on the table. Ethan stared. What is that? A service order, Claire said. Department equipment. Boots, 2 pairs. The vendor name is stamped at the top. It is dated a week before Emma died. Mason's face hardened. Where did you get this? Claire's voice dropped. From a clerk I went to high school with. She works in procurement now. I told her I was writing a memorial piece about Emma and I wanted to understand the department at the time. She printed it and told me not to mention her name. Ethan looked at Mason. This ties boots to the department, not to you. Mason ran a finger over the faded ink. It ties boots to someone. A lot of someone's. Claire nodded. Yes, but it narrows the story. It turns the boot print from a civilian clue into a department clue. Mason's gaze lifted slowly, and it points back at Calder. Claire did not speak for a moment. Then she reached into the folder again and pulled out a sheet of paper with her own handwritten notes. Names, dates, and a phone number scribbled in the margin. I also checked property records, she said. Calder owned land near Quarry Road at the time. Not in his name, in his uncle's name. Ethan felt his eyebrows lift near the trail. Claire nodded, eyes fixed on the table. Close enough to hear a car door shut. Mason's hands tightened on the pad. They never mentioned that in court. They would not, Claire said. It makes him part of the map. Ethan looked from paper to paper, the story reshaping itself with each piece. He felt his own past shifting under his feet. He thought of Mason's conviction of the way the town had looked at the Cole family afterward, as if guilt could stick to anyone who shared a bloodline. Mason pushed his chair back slightly and rubbed a hand over his scalp. You found all this in 6 months. Claire's mouth trembled. I did not sleep much. Mason's eyes sharpened. Someone helped you. Claire hesitated. Not with the digging, with staying alive long enough to dig. Ethan's chest tightened. What do you mean? Claire's gaze flicked toward the window again, then toward the front door. Her voice lowered. After I confronted Calder, things started happening. Mason leaned forward. Like what? My mailbox was emptied before the carrier arrived, Claire said. Twice. My neighbor, the one on the other side, said she saw a dark SUV parked by my place early one morning. She thought it was a tourist, but it was there too long. Then I got a call from a blocked number. No one spoke. Just breathing. Ethan's jaw clenched. You told me he threatened you. You did not tell me this. Claire's eyes glistened. You already wanted me gone. Mason's voice came low. He was watching you. Claire nodded once, and when I came over last night, I took the long way. I circled through town. I cut my headlights near the last bend. I still felt like someone was behind me. Ethan's stomach turned. He pictured the lake road, the pull-offs, the trees thick enough to hide a vehicle. He pictured Lily upstairs safe in her bed, only because he believed she was. Mason looked toward the front window. If he is watching you, he might be watching here. Ethan stood and went to the window again. He pulled the curtain back with 2 fingers. The fog had lifted a little, revealing damp gravel and the pale stretch of driveway. Beyond that, the road curved away through pines. Nothing moved. Ethan forced himself to breathe. He looked toward the truck. Lily sat inside, still buckled rabbit pressed to her chest, eyes locked on the cabin. When she saw Ethan, she mouthed something he could not hear. Ethan raised a hand palm out, a promise to stay close. He let the curtain fall and turned back to the table. We cannot leave her in there much longer. Mason's gaze softened briefly. She is scared. She is smart, Ethan said, voice tight. That makes it worse. Claire rose from her chair. Let me go to her. Ethan shook his head. No, I told you not to say her name again. She does not need your face linked to this, not yet. Claire's eyes lowered. All right. Mason stared at Ethan for a long second. Take her to town, he said, now. Before someone else decides you should not. Ethan's pulse jumped. I cannot leave you here with her. Mason's mouth twitched, humorless. You think I am going to hurt a kid? Ethan held his brother's gaze. I think the world likes to use kids as leverage. Mason went still at that. He nodded once, slow. Then move her. Ethan looked at Claire. You stay with the folder. Claire's voice came steady. I will not let it out of my sight. Mason tapped the pad with the pen. And you call the sheriff, he said. From town, not from here. Ethan hesitated. He did not like how quickly Mason had returned to strategy, like prison had taught him to build plans out of danger. But Ethan also knew Mason had learned what the rest of them never had to. I will, Ethan said. He grabbed the duffel by the door and stepped outside. Cold air hit his lungs. Gravel shifted under his feet as he walked to the truck. Lily's face pressed close to the glass. Ethan opened the passenger door and crouched. Hey, he said softly. We are going to Grandma Marjorie's now. Lily's eyes searched his face. Who was that man? Ethan chose his words carefully. Family. Lily's brows pulled together. Why does he look like he is sad and mad at the same time? Ethan swallowed. Because he has been gone a long time. Lily looked past him toward the cabin. Is he staying here? Ethan forced a small smile. Get your rabbit. We are going. He helped her out, guided her around the hood, and buckled her into the back seat instead. He locked the doors, then hurried back to the cabin. Inside, Mason stood near the living room window, watching the road through a crack in the curtain. Claire sat at the table with the folder open, arranging papers into neat stacks like order could hold off chaos. Ethan grabbed his keys. Mason glanced over his shoulder. Do not drive fast, he said. Drive normal. Ethan nodded, then stopped. If something happens, he said quietly, you protect her. Mason's face tightened. He looked towards the stairs, then back at Ethan. I did not get 15 years taken from me just to watch another kid get hurt, he said. Go. Ethan opened his mouth to say more, but there was no more room for words. He turned toward the door. Before he reached it, a sound rolled in from outside. Tires on wet gravel, slow and deliberate, close enough to make the cabin's window glass faintly tremble. Ethan froze with his keys in his hand. Mason's head snapped toward the window. Claire's fingers closed around the folder. All 3 of them stood in silence, listening as the vehicle crept nearer and the crunch of gravel stopped just beyond the porch. The tires stopped. Gravel settled. For a second, the cabin held its breath. Ethan stood with his keys in his fist, listening. He heard a car door open, then shut with a soft, controlled sound. Footsteps crossed the porch boards like the person walking had been on 1,000 porches before and never once felt unwelcome. A knock came firm and familiar. Ethan Sheriff Brooks called through the door. Open up. Ethan's eyes met Mason's. Mason's face tightened, his body already angled toward the back of the cabin. Claire's fingers clamped around the folder, knuckles whitening. Ethan put a finger to his lips, then pointed toward the hallway that led to the back door. He mouthed 2 words without sound. "Out now." Mason nodded once. Claire rose without scraping her chair. She tucked the folder under her coat and moved as if the floor might betray her. Mason went first silent fast, a shadow cutting through the narrow hall. Ethan forced air into his lungs, then stepped to the front door. He opened it just enough to see the porch. Sheriff Brooks stood close, hat on rein, darkening the shoulders of his jacket. His cruiser sat in the driveway with the lights off, but the engine idled a low vibration in the air. Beside the cruiser, another vehicle rested on the gravel. Not a patrol car. A dark SUV with tinted windows clean enough to look expensive even under fog and dawn. Brooks's eyes scanned Ethan's face. "You all right?" Ethan kept his voice steady. "Why are you here?" Brooks shifted his weight. "We got a call from a deputy posted near the turnoff. He saw movement near the lake road and a vehicle heading this way. I came to make sure you were not alone out here." Ethan's hand stayed on the door edge, ready to close it. "I was about to leave." Brooks's gaze flicked past Ethan's shoulder into the dim cabin. "Where's Lily?" "In the truck," Ethan said. Brooks's eyes sharpened. "In your truck?" Ethan nodded once, locked. A door on the SUV opened. Ethan's attention snapped to the sound. A man stepped out, tall, broad, through the shoulders, wearing a dark coat and a pressed shirt that did not belong to early morning in the woods. He moved like he expected the world to part for him. His hair was trimmed tight, his face clean-shaven, his smile quick and shallow. Chief Grant Calder. Ethan recognized him from Claire's copied photo and felt his stomach drop. In person, Calder looked calmer than the idea of him. That was worse. Calm meant practice. Calder adjusted his cuffs as he walked, eyes taking in the cabin, the dock line, the slope to the lake. His gaze settled on Ethan with a polite nod. "Mr. Cole," Calder said. His voice was smooth, warm enough to fool someone who wanted to be fooled. "Sorry for the hour." Brooks did not introduce him. He simply said, "Chief Calder volunteered support. He has resources." Calder smiled slightly at the word volunteered, like it was a compliment he enjoyed. "A fugitive case," he said. "Small communities deserve help." Ethan's throat tightened. He kept his face blank. "Help with what?" Calder's eyes held Ethan's too long, just a fraction. "With Mason Cole." The name hung in the air between them. Ethan felt the urge to slam the door, to lock it, to pretend the cabin was a fortress. But Calder stood on the porch like a man who did not need permission. Brooks spoke first. "Ethan, we need to check the property." Ethan's hand tightened on the door edge. "My daughter is in the truck." Brooks nodded. "Then we keep this calm. We look around and we leave." Calder's gaze drifted toward the driveway, toward Ethan's truck. "A child," he said almost casually. "That changes the stakes." Ethan's voice came low. "She stays out of this." Calder's smile did not move, of course. Ethan felt heat rise behind his eyes. He forced it down. He looked at Brooks, not Calder. "Sheriff, can I speak to you for a second?" "Alone." Brooks hesitated. His eyes flicked to Calder, then back. "About what?" Ethan kept his voice even. "About why Claire Hart was in my kitchen last night." Calder's head tilted slightly, like a man hearing an interesting song. Brooks's expression tightened. "Claire Hart," Brooks repeated. Ethan watched Calder closely. The chief's face stayed composed, but something sharpened in his eyes. A focus that did not belong to polite conversation. Brooks stepped closer to Ethan, lowering his voice. "She's here." "She is," Ethan said. "And she has documents." Brooks's gaze went hard. "Documents about the old case." Ethan nodded once. Calder took one step closer, still on the porch, still outside, but close enough that Ethan could smell cologne over the damp pine air. "If there's evidence," Calder said, "the right place for it is in official hands." Ethan met his eyes. "Whose hands?" Calder's smile deepened slightly, as if Ethan had made a joke. "Law enforcement. We can protect it. We can protect you." Ethan's heart pounded, but his face stayed still. He leaned toward the Brooks, voice quieter. Sheriff, he's the one connected to it. Brooks's eyes narrowed. Connected how? Ethan's mouth went dry. He had no time to explain boot prints and altered reports without lighting the fuse right on the porch. And behind him, inside the cabin, Mason and Claire were moving toward the back door with the folder that could get them killed. Ethan swallowed and chose a different move. "Let me bring Claire out," he said. "Let her speak to you. Then you decide." Calder's tone stayed friendly. "No need. We can step inside, all of us. It's warmer." Ethan blocked the doorway with his body. "My daughter's asleep upstairs." Brooks watched Ethan's posture, the way he held the door like a shield. Something in the sheriff's face shifted. Suspicion not directed at Ethan exactly, but at the scene. Calder's gaze cut past Ethan again toward the interior. His eyes lingered on the hallway, the angle toward the back of the cabin. Ethan felt as if the man could smell fear, the way dogs smell blood. Brooks cleared his throat. "Chief, why don't you take a walk around back?" he said, measured. "Check the shoreline. I'll talk to Ethan." Calder's smile held for half a beat, then thinned. "Sure," he said. "Happy to." He stepped off the porch boots, crunching softly on gravel. Ethan tracked the movement with the corner of his eye. Calder did not head straight for the back. He drifted toward the driveway, first slow and deliberate, as if he were not checking the perimeter but choosing the best angle. His eyes landed on the truck. The passenger window was fogged slightly from Lily's breath. She sat upright now, rabbit in her lap, face turned toward the cabin. When Calder's gaze found her, he paused. Ethan's stomach tightened hard. Calder lifted a hand in a small wave, almost friendly. Then his hand dropped to his belt, resting there with casual confidence, fingers near the grip of his weapon. Ethan felt the blood leave his face. Brooks saw it. He followed Ethan's stare, then looked back at Calder. The sheriff's expression sharpened confusion and concern, mixing into something closer to alarm. Ethan forced his voice to stay level, but it came out thin. "Sheriff," he said, "please keep him away from my daughter." Brooks stepped forward, putting himself between Calder and the truck by a few feet, not dramatically, just enough to change the line. "Chief," he called, "leave the kid alone." Calder did not look offended. He looked amused. "Just saying hello," he replied, voice carrying easily across the gravel. The back door of the cabin clicked so soft it could have been imagined. Ethan's pulse jumped. Brooks did not seem to notice. Calder did. Calder's head turned slow toward the side of the cabin. His eyes narrowed slightly like a hunter catching a sound in tall grass. At the same moment, the truck door latch popped. Ethan's heart stopped. Lily shoved the door open from inside and climbed down, rabbit tucked under one arm. Her hair was a mess, her face pinched with the stubborn certainty of a child who has been told to sit still for too long. "Dad?" she called, voice loud in the quiet morning. "I'm hungry." Ethan took a step off the porch without thinking. "Lily, honey, get back in the truck." She frowned, confused. "But you said pancakes." Brooks's head snapped toward her. Calder's eyes locked on her like she was a lever someone had just placed in his hand. Ethan forced his tone lighter, almost playful, fighting the tremor in his throat. "Back in the truck, okay?" "Right now." Lily's eyes flicked between Ethan and the two men on the driveway. She hugged her rabbit tighter, uncertainty wobbling across her face. Calder's hand stayed on his belt. His smile never left. Brooks looked from Lily to Ethan, then to Calder. The sheriff's jaw tightened. "Chief?" he said, quiet but firm. "Check the back like I asked. I'll handle this." Calder did not move right away. He stood there in the damp morning, eyes fixed on Lily, hand resting near his weapon as if it belonged there. Ethan felt his body go rigid, every instinct screaming to scoop Lily up and run, but he knew running could turn a threat into a shot. He kept his hands open, palms visible, and spoke gently. "Lily, sweetheart, back in the truck." Lily took one step toward him, then stopped. Behind the cabin, out of sight, a board creaked in the direction of the boathouse. The creak came again, closer this time, a slow complaint of wood under careful weight. Ethan kept his eyes on Lily, but his nerves tracked every sound behind the cabin, like thin wires stretched too tight. Calder's gaze stayed fixed on Lily. His hand rested at his belt, casual in the way only practiced danger can be. Sheriff Brooks stood a few steps away, shoulders tense, trying to keep his voice normal. "Lily," Ethan said, soft but firm. "Back in the truck, sweetheart." Lily's mouth pulled into a stubborn line. She hugged the rabbit tighter. "I'm hungry," she repeated, like hunger was the only rule that mattered. Ethan took a slow step toward her, palms open, moving like he was approaching a frightened animal. "I know. I'll get you food. Right now I need you inside the truck." Lily's eyes flicked to Calder, then back to Ethan. Her small face tightened with confusion. "Why is that man looking at me?" Ethan felt his throat constrict. "Because he doesn't know you," he said, keeping his tone light. "And strangers make bad choices when they feel nervous. Help me out, please." Brooks shifted his stance, glancing at Calder. "Chief," he said, controlled, "go check the back." Calder did not move. He gave Brooks a look that was almost friendly, then returned his attention to Lily. "Kiddo," he called, voice warm. "Your dad just wants you safe." Lily stared at him, uncertain now. The friendliness did not fit the tension in the air. She took one step back toward the truck door. That was when Mason moved. He came around the corner of the cabin so fast, Ethan barely registered him, a lean, silent shape cutting through the wet grass. Mason did not look at Calder. He looked only at Lily, like she was a beacon and everything else was noise. "Lily," Mason said, voice low. She turned toward him, eyes wide. "Who are you?" Mason did not answer. He crossed the last few feet in 2 strides, scooped her gently by the shoulders, and pulled her behind the thick trunk of a pine tree near the edge of the yard. He crouched with her, keeping his body between her and the driveway. Calder's posture snapped from casual to sharp. His hand came off his belt and closed around the grip of his weapon. Ethan's chest seized. "Sheriff," he barked, voice breaking through the morning air. "Look at him. Look at what he's doing." Brooks turned, fast eyes following the movement, seeing Mason and seeing Lily disappear behind the tree. His hand went to his own weapon, but he did not draw it yet. His face tightened with a man's worst problem. 2 threats, 2 stories, 1 heartbeat to choose. Calder drew his gun. The sound was small, just metal and leather, but it made the whole yard feel like it tilted. Calder lifted the weapon, not quite aiming, not yet, but holding it at the ready. Ethan stepped off the porch, hands raised. "Calder, stop." Calder's eyes did not leave the tree. "Fugitive just grabbed a child," he said loud enough for Brooks to hear. "This is exactly why I am here." Behind the tree, Lily started to cry, the sound thin and scared. Mason leaned close to her, speaking into her hair. "It's okay," Mason murmured. "Don't move, just stay small." Lily's sobs hit Ethan like blows. He took another step forward, palms still up. Mason isn't hurting her. He's protecting her. Calder's mouth curved slightly. "Of course he is. That's what you will say." Brooks finally drew his weapon, pointing it downward, not at anyone. "Calder," he said, voice tight. "Lower it." Calder glanced at Brooks for half a second, annoyance flickering, then looked back at the tree. "Sheriff, do your job. That man is armed." "He isn't," Ethan snapped. Calder's eyes cut to Ethan. "You know that." Ethan's pulse pounded in his throat. He could not look away from the gun. "Because I've seen his hands." "He came here with a piece of paper, not a weapon." Calder's jaw tightened. "Paper can be a distraction." Ethan took a shaky breath. Brooks's eyes stayed on the tree, but his attention split between Ethan and Calder. Ethan forced his voice steady. "Sheriff, he framed my brother." He altered the case. "Claire Hart has proof." Calder's gaze sharpened at the name Claire. The warmth vanished from his face so quickly it was like a light turning off. "Claire Hart," he repeated almost softly. Brooks looked at Ethan. "Where is she?" Ethan's mind raced. If he said she was behind the cabin, Calder would go straight for her. If he lied, Brooks might not believe anything else. Calder solved it for him by shifting his stance toward the side of the cabin, weapon still raised. Claire, he called, voice smooth again. If you are here, come out. Let's talk like adults. No one answered. Lily's crying grew louder. Mason kept her pressed close, a hand covering the side of her head to muffle the sound. Dad, Lily sobbed. Dad, I'm scared. Ethan's legs wanted to run. He stayed rooted, forcing himself to move slowly to keep his voice gentle. I know, baby. I'm right here. Stay behind the tree. Brooks took a step, angling closer to Ethan. He kept his weapon down, but his shoulders were tense, ready. Ethan, he said low. Tell Mason to show his hands. Ethan swallowed. Mason, he called, voice steady but urgent. Show your hands, slowly. Mason hesitated. Then his head lifted just enough for Ethan to see his face. Mason's eyes were locked on Calder, not on Brooks. He raised both hands, open fingers spread, then lowered them again to hold Lily close. He is not armed, Ethan said. Calder's laugh was short. He's a convicted murderer, Sheriff. Brooks's gaze flicked to Calder. Convicted, Brooks repeated, and something in his tone shifted. A doubt that had been sleeping under procedure. Calder's weapon rose a fraction higher. Move toward me, Mason, he commanded. Away from the child, now. Mason's voice came out rough. You don't get to tell me anything. Calder's eyes narrowed. You want to add kidnapping to your list. Ethan's stomach twisted. He turned his head slightly toward Brooks, keeping his hands up. Sheriff, he said you separated from him a minute ago. You did that because you don't trust him. Brooks did not answer, but the pause was an answer on its own. A door hinge squealed from behind the cabin. Calder's head snapped toward the sound. His weapon swung with it fast. Claire stepped into view from the side yard near the boathouse, her coat open, hair loose, face streaked with dried tears. She held the folder above her head with both hands like a flag. Sheriff Brooks, she called, voice carrying across the wet grass. I was coerced into giving false testimony. Calder's face went hard. Claire, he warned, and the single word sounded like a threat. Claire did not stop. These documents show that Grant Calder killed my sister, she said, voice shaking but clear, and framed Mason Cole. For a moment, nobody moved. The world narrowed to 4 people standing in a yard, a child crying behind a tree, and the black circle of a gun barrel swinging between them. Brooks's eyes widened, what he breathed. Calder's weapon lifted, aiming now not at Mason but at Claire. Ethan felt time slow. He saw Claire's hands tighten around the folder. He saw Brooks's face tighten with decision forming too late. He saw Lily's rabbit drop onto the grass behind the tree. Claire, Ethan shouted, "Get down!" Claire did not. She stood there, shoulders squared, eyes on Brooks. Sheriff, look at the reports, she said. There are 2 medical examiner versions. The time was altered. The boot print is department gear. The photo was kept out of evidence. Calder's finger tightened on the trigger. The muzzle shifted toward Claire's chest. Brooks's weapon snapped up. The shot cracked through the damp morning, sharp enough to make the birds explode out of the pines. Lily screamed. Ethan flinched, but he did not look away. Calder's body jerked. His face twisted in shock and pain. He staggered back, his gun slipping from his hand and clattering onto the gravel. He grabbed at his shoulder, then fell to one knee. Brooks moved fast, then no hesitation left. He kicked Calder's weapon away, boots scraping on stone, and swung his own gun toward Calder with steady hands. Don't move, Brooks commanded. Calder's breath came in harsh bursts. You shot me, he hissed, disbelief and rage mixing in his voice. You shot a chief. Brooks's eyes stayed cold. You aimed at an unarmed woman holding evidence. Put your other hand where I can see it. Calder's good hand lifted slowly, palm open, then trembled as it hovered in the air. Behind the tree, Mason kept Lily pinned close, his voice low in her ear. It's okay, it's okay. Don't look. Ethan forced himself to move slow and deliberate. He went toward the tree, first stepping carefully, so nobody thought he was rushing. Mason's eyes tracked him. Ethan crouched beside them. Lily's cheeks were wet. Her whole body shook. It's me, Ethan whispered. He wrapped an arm around her and pulled her close without lifting her fully, keeping them low. "You're okay." Lily clung to him, sobbing into his shoulder. "The loud noise," she choked. "The loud noise." "I know," Ethan murmured. "I know." Claire stood frozen near the boathouse, still holding the folder, overhead, arms trembling from the strain. Ethan turned his head just enough to see her. She was crying again, but she was still standing. Brooks pulled handcuffs from his belt and snapped them onto Calder's wrists. The metallic click sounded final. Calder's face twisted with humiliation. "This is not over," he spat, voice ragged. Brooks leaned in close enough that only Calder would hear. "It became over the moment you put your hand on that gun," Brooks said. Then he straightened and called out, voice loud and steady. "Deputy, I need medical and backup at Moosehead Lake Road, now." The cruiser radio crackled as Brooks spoke into it. His eyes lifted to Ethan, then to Mason behind the tree, then to Claire with the folder raised like a verdict. The damp air smelled like pine sap and gunpowder. The yard held a stunned silence, as if the lake itself had gone still to listen. Sheriff Brooks kept his gun trained on Calder until the chief's breathing steadied into something that sounded like anger instead of shock. The damp yard smelled sharp pine and spent powder. Somewhere down the lake road, a siren began to rise, faint at first, then closer, as if it was being pulled toward the cabin by the tension in the air. Ethan held Lily tight against his chest. She clung to him with both arms and shook her rabbit forgotten on the wet grass behind the tree. "It's done," Ethan murmured into her hair. "You're safe. You're with me." Lily's voice came out muffled against his shoulder. It was so loud. "I know," he said. "I know." Mason stayed crouched near the tree, watching Calder and Brooks with a predator's stillness, not because he wanted violence, but because he had learned what hesitation costs. His eyes flicked to Lily, then to Ethan, then back to Brooks. Brooks snapped the handcuffs tighter on Calder and stepped away, keeping his own body between the wounded chief and everyone else. "Hands where I can see them," he told Calder again, as if repeating it could keep the world from tipping back into chaos. Calder's face was pale now. A dark patch spread across his shoulder where the bullet had torn fabric and skin. He tried to square his posture anyway, chin-lifted eyes cold. "You just ruined your career," Calder rasped at Brooks. Brooks did not answer. He spoke into his radio again, voice clipped. "Medical on scene. Secure the driveway. I want state investigators notified, now." Claire stood near the boathouse like her legs had forgotten how to move. The folder still hung in her hands, but her arms trembled so hard the papers inside made a faint tapping sound against each other. Her eyes stayed locked on Brooks, on the cuffs on the gun, kicked into the gravel. She looked like someone who had jumped off a cliff and only now realized the ground could have been waiting. Ethan shifted Lily slightly so her face was turned away from Calder. "Look at me," he whispered. "Just me." Lily's eyes were wide and glossy. "Is that man going to hurt us?" Ethan swallowed. "No." The sirens grew louder. A patrol car appeared, first lights flashing through the trees. It rolled up the driveway and stopped hard. 2 deputies stepped out, weapons drawn, then slowed when they saw Brooks standing over Calder. Sheriff, one deputy called, breath visible in the cold air. Brooks pointed sharply. "Weapon is there. Secure it. Keep eyes on him." He nodded toward Calder without looking away. Another set of lights spilled across the yard as an ambulance followed, then another cruiser. The driveway filled with uniforms and radios and the heavy sound of boots on wet gravel. A medic knelt beside Calder, gloved hands already working. Calder tried to pull away, pride rising. The medic ignored it and cut the coat open with shears. Calder's jaw clenched hard enough to show cords in his neck. Brooks finally lowered his weapon slightly, not relaxed, just no longer aiming to fire. He looked toward the tree. Mason Cole Brooks called, voice firm. "I need you to come out where I can see you. Slow." Mason's eyes narrowed. "You going to shoot me too?" Brooks did not flinch. "No, but I need to control the scene." Mason looked at Ethan, then at Lily. His face tightened with something like regret that he had dragged a child into his worst day. He stood slowly, hands open, and stepped out from the tree. Ethan rose with Lily still in his arms. He shifted her weight and carried her toward the porch away from the cluster of uniforms. Daddy, Lily whispered, "Who is he?" Ethan paused on the porch steps. His voice went soft. "He's my brother." Lily's brows pinched. "Your brother?" Ethan nodded once. He felt the words land like a stone in a pond, ripples spreading through her face as she tried to place a new person into the shape of her world. Brooks approached Mason with another deputy. The deputy lifted handcuffs ready. Brooks raised a hand, stopping him for a beat. He studied Mason's face, then glanced at the tree where Lily's rabbit lay in the grass. "You pulled her out of the line of fire," Brooks said, quietly. Mason's eyes flicked toward the porch. "I pulled a kid away from a man with a gun." Brooks held his gaze. "You still escaped custody." Mason's jaw tightened. "They were taking me back to a cage for something I did not do." Brooks's expression did not soften, but it shifted. "I'm going to cuff you," he said. "Not because I think you hurt her, because procedure exists and everyone out here is watching. But I'm also going to hear you, do you understand?" Mason hesitated, then nodded once. "Do it." The cuffs clicked around Mason's wrists. Mason did not resist. He did not look away from Brooks as if he was memorizing the sheriff's face for later, a face that might decide whether his life opened up or closed again. Claire took a step forward, still holding the folder. A deputy lifted a hand to stop her. Brooks turned. "Let her through." Claire walked toward them slowly, careful not to trip, careful not to appear sudden. She held the folder out to Brooks with both hands as if offering something sacred. Brooks accepted it, then looked at her. "You are Claire Hart." She nodded. Her lips trembled. "Yes." Brooks's gaze went briefly to Calder on the ground, then back to Claire. "You said false testimony." Claire's voice cracked. "I did it. I repeated what they coached. I believed what they showed me. I helped destroy him." Her eyes flicked to Mason. "I helped destroy you." Mason's face tightened. He said nothing. Brooks opened the folder just enough to see the copies, the stamps, the dates. His eyes moved fast. He closed it again and held it to his chest. "I want this logged properly," Brooks said to a deputy. "Chain of custody starts now. Photograph everything. Bag everything." Calder, half lifted onto a stretcher, twisted his head towards them. His eyes found Claire and hardened. "You think paper saves you?" Calder hissed. Claire's shoulders jerked at the sound of his voice. She forced herself not to step back. Brooks leaned toward Calder, voice low and sharp. "Save your breath. You're about to have a lot of questions to answer." The medics wheeled Calder toward the ambulance. As the stretcher rolled, Calder's gaze stayed on Ethan's porch, then slid to Lily's face. Lily shrank closer to Ethan's chest. Ethan turned his body, blocking her view. When the ambulance doors shut, the sound was a clean slam that made the morning feel more real. Brooks stepped onto the porch and lowered his voice. "Ethan, I need your daughter inside." Ethan nodded and carried Lily into the cabin. The warmth hit them like a blanket. Lily's trembling eased a fraction, but her eyes stayed wide. Ethan set her down gently on the couch and crouched to her level. "I need you to do something brave," he said. Lily sniffed hard. "I already did brave." Ethan swallowed a laugh that came too close to a sob. "Yes, you did. Now I need you to stay here, okay? Blanket on, rabbit in your lap when I bring it. No doors open unless I say." Lily's voice dropped. "Are you going to jail?" Ethan's throat tightened. "No." "Is Uncle Mason going to jail?" Ethan hesitated, then chose honesty without cruelty. "They're going to talk to him. They're going to listen this time." Lily watched his face like she could read the truth in his pupils. "I want pancakes," she whispered. Ethan nodded. "You'll have pancakes." He stood and went to the window. Outside, deputies moved around the yard, securing photographing, speaking into radios. Mason stood with cuffs on, head bowed, slightly breathing through his nose as if the air itself hurt. Claire stood near the edge of the porch steps, hands empty now, arms wrapped around her own ribs. She looked smaller without the folder. Brooks came inside, closing the door behind him. He kept his voice low. "I'm going to take statements, right here. I want you steady." Ethan nodded. "My in-laws are expecting Lily." Brooks looked toward Lily, then back to Ethan. "Call them. Have them come here instead. The road is controlled. I'd rather move her with an escort after we settle the scene." Ethan reached for his phone and dialed Marjorie Keene again. When she answered, he kept his voice calm, but the words came tight. "Marjorie," he said, "I need you to come to the cabin. Bring Tom. Stay in your car until I wave you in." Her breath caught on the line. "Ethan, what happened?" "A situation," he said. "Lily's okay. Just come." Marjorie did not argue. "We're on our way." Ethan ended the call and leaned his forehead against his phone for a second. When he lifted his head, Brooks was watching him. "I've had a bad feeling about your brother's case for years," Brooks said quietly. The timeline never sat right. Witness statements felt too clean. He looked down at the folder in his hands. "But bad feelings don't hold up in court." Ethan's voice came out rough. 15 years. Brooks's jaw flexed, "I know." The statement taking blurred into a strange, careful ritual. Brooks asked questions. Ethan answered. Claire spoke in a voice that shook, then steadied. Mason was brought inside with the deputy cuffs still on and seated at the table like a man being invited into his own life for the first time in years. Claire signed a written statement with trembling hands. She described the rehearsals, the phrases, the pressure. She described Calder's threat in the courthouse parking lot and the calls that followed. Her pen scratched across the paper as if every letter took effort. Mason spoke next. His voice stayed flat at first, like he was protecting himself from hope. He recounted the bar, the drive, the way the detectives had twisted details until they fit a shape they already wanted. When he spoke about prison, his eyes stayed on the tabletop. Brooks listened without interrupting. When Mason finished, Brooks nodded once and wrote more notes. A knock came at the door. Ethan's heart jumped until Brooks called out, "It's fine." Marjorie and Tom Keene stepped inside, faces pale, eyes wide. Marjorie crossed the room in 2 strides and pulled Lily into her arms. Lily buried her face in Marjorie's coat and began to cry again, quieter this time, the way children cry when they finally believe they are held. Tom's gaze landed on Mason at the table, cuffs on face older than any memory. Tom's mouth opened, then closed. He looked at Ethan instead. Ethan gave him a small nod. Not permission, not a request. Just the truth. Tom's eyes softened, then he looked away, like he needed a second to adjust to a world that had shifted. Marjorie stroked Lily's hair. "We're taking her home," she said to Ethan, voice firm. "We'll make pancakes. We'll keep the door locked. Call us when you can breathe." Ethan walked them to the door. Lily looked back once, eyes still wet. Her gaze landed on Mason. Mason's cuffed hands flexed slightly, as if he wanted to wave but did not know if he was allowed. Lily hesitated, then lifted her rabbit in a small salute before turning back into Marjorie's arms. When their car finally pulled away with a deputy escort, the cabin felt emptier, but also quieter in a way Ethan needed. He returned inside. Mason sat at the table, shoulders hunched. Claire stood by the window staring out at the lake like it was the only thing that had not lied to them. Brooks closed his notebook. "I'm taking Mason to the station," he said, voice measured. "He will not be placed in general holding. I'm contacting the county attorney and the state investigators. This evidence goes above me." Mason's laugh came out short and bitter. "Above you, always above?" Brooks met his eyes. "I can't undo what happened," he said. "But I can do this right from here forward." Mason stared at him for a long moment, then nodded once, not trusting, not refusing. Deputies guided Mason outside. Mason paused at the doorway and looked back at Ethan. His eyes held 1,000 things he did not know how to say. Ethan's voice broke through them anyway. "I'm here." Mason's jaw tightened. He gave a single nod, then stepped out. The yard slowly emptied as cruisers pulled away one by one. The ambulance was long gone. The fog lifted more, revealing the lake in a gray sheen. The cabin felt bruised but standing. Ethan found Claire near the shoreline after the last deputy moved out of sight. She stood at the edge of the property where wet grass met sand, arms wrapped tight around herself, staring across the water. "You're leaving," Ethan said. It was not a question. Claire's shoulders rose on a breath, then fell. "I should," she whispered. Ethan stopped a few feet behind her. He did not reach for her. He did not know if he had earned that. "My brother is in cuffs again," he said, voice low, "even if it's temporary." Claire closed her eyes. "I know." Ethan watched the back of her head, the pale hair moving slightly in the lake wind. "You saved my daughter," he said. "You saved him too. You did not have to step into that yard with the folder over your head." Claire's laugh came out broken. "I did. I created the yard." Ethan stepped closer, careful. "You could have disappeared." "You didn't." Claire turned to face him. Her eyes were red, her cheeks damp. She looked exhausted, like a person who had held her breath for years and only now remembered oxygen. "I don't know what I am to you," she said softly. "I know what I was. I know what I tried to be." Ethan's throat tightened. He looked past her to the lake, then back to her face. "Right now," he said, "you're here." Claire's lips parted, then closed again. She nodded once, small. A gust moved over the water and lifted a few strands of her hair. Claire pressed them back with shaking fingers. She did not step away, but she did not step closer either. Ethan stood with her in the damp morning, listening to the lake and the distant hum of patrol cars fading into the trees, both of them still trying to understand how the same place could hold threat and relief in the same breath. Ethan stood with Claire at the edge of the sand, the lake breathing in small, steady laps against the shore. The fog had thinned into a light veil. Sun pushed through it in pale stripes, turning the water the color of brushed steel. Claire kept her arms folded tight, like she was holding herself together with pressure alone. "Right now, you're here," Ethan had said, and the words still hung between them. "I can't stay in your house," Claire whispered. Ethan nodded. "You don't have to." She stared at him as if she expected a trap in that answer. "People don't talk like that after what I did." Ethan's jaw flexed. He looked past her shoulder toward the dock, toward the yard where the gravel still held the faint scuffs of boots and rushed movement. "People don't usually lose 15 years either," he said. "And they don't usually get them back by pretending it never happened." Claire's eyes watered again. She wiped them once quick. "They will come for me," she said. "Calder has friends. He has reach." "They already came," Ethan replied. His voice stayed quiet, but it carried weight. "And they did not leave with what you brought." A car door shut somewhere up the driveway. A deputy called out. Then another voice answered. The scene was breaking down into normal sounds. Procedure, cleanup, the world trying to reset. Claire's shoulders sank slightly, like her body had been waiting for permission to stop bracing. "I'm going back to my place," she said. "I'll lock the doors. I'll sit in the dark and wait for the phone to ring." Ethan stepped a little closer, not touching. "You do that," he said. "And if you hear anything, you call me. Or Brooks." Claire gave a small nod. "You don't hate me," she said, and it sounded like a question she did not want answered. Ethan looked at her for a long beat. "I don't know what I feel," he said honestly. "But I know what you did this morning. You stood up when you could have stayed hidden." Claire's throat worked. "I'm tired," she whispered. "So am I," Ethan said. She turned away, first walking back across the damp grass toward her own property line, moving slower now, like every step had to be chosen. Ethan watched until she disappeared behind the trees. Then he went back inside the cabin and stood in the kitchen where the folder had been, where the table still held the imprint of elbows and fear. The days that followed did not feel like relief. They felt like waiting in a hospital hallway with no clock. State investigators arrived. Not with sirens, not with swagger. With clipboards and quiet voices and the kind of attention that made even Sheriff Brooks look careful. They photographed the documents again. They compared stamps. They pulled old evidence boxes from storage, handling them with gloves, as if time itself could contaminate the truth. Ethan sat through interviews that lasted hours. He answered the same question 3 different ways because 3 different people asked it in 3 different tones. He called Marjorie and Tom every morning and every night. Lily wanted to know when she could come home. Ethan kept saying, soon, his voice steady even when his stomach was not. Mason spent 2 nights in a secured room at the station, cuffs off, but doors locked, watched like a man who might vanish if someone blinked. Ethan visited when he could. The first time, Mason sat across from him with his hands on the table, palms down, as if proving to the world that his hands were empty. "I hate being back in a room like this," Mason said. Ethan nodded. "I know." Mason's eyes lifted. "You didn't know," he said, then stopped himself. His gaze dropped. "I'm sorry, I'm full of it." Ethan leaned forward. "Be full," he said. "Say what you need to say." Mason's mouth opened, then he looked away. "I saw your kid," he muttered. "She looked at me like I was a stranger." Ethan felt something twist in his chest. "She is 8, he said. "She has never met you." Mason gave a short, bitter laugh. 15 years, and she has never met me." Ethan held his brother's eyes. "She will," he said. The county attorney moved faster once Calder was in cuffs, and a medic report confirmed the bullet had been clean through muscle, not fatal. Caleb's arrogance turned into fury, his fury into silence. Lawyers circled him. The investigators kept asking questions anyway. A hearing was scheduled. Ethan sat in the back row with Marjorie and Tom on one side and Lily between them, her legs swinging rabbit tucked under her arm. Mason entered in a suit that did not fit, right shoulders too tight, sleeves too short, like his body had changed shape from years of survival. He looked at Ethan and tried to smile. It barely formed. Claire sat 2 rows behind Ethan alone. She wore a plain sweater and kept her hands clasped together in her lap. When her eyes met Ethan's, she looked away as if she did not deserve that connection in a room that had once swallowed his family. When the judge spoke, the words landed like stones dropped into still water. Procedural at first, then the sentence that mattered. Conviction vacated. Ethan felt his chest go hollow. He heard Marjorie gasp. He felt Lily's small hand slip into his. Mason did not move for a moment. His mouth opened, then closed. A sound came out of him that was not a laugh and not a sob, something scraped raw from the deepest part of a man. Outside the courthouse, cameras waited. Reporters called questions. Mason walked past them with his eyes forward, Ethan at his side. When they reached the parking lot, Mason stopped and looked up at the sky like he was checking if it was still there. "I forgot it was this big," Mason said quietly. Ethan swallowed hard. "It's yours," he replied, "all of it." Compensation came months later. Not quickly, not cleanly, but it came. Enough for Mason to rent a small place near the lake, then buy a cabin across the water with a dock of its own. Close enough that Ethan could see the porch light on from his side at night, far enough that Mason could breathe without feeling watched. The first time Mason came over for dinner, Lily hovered behind Ethan's knee until Mason crouched and held out a small wooden box. "I made this," Mason said, "in the shop program. They let me keep it." Lily stared at the box, then at his hands. "What is it?" she asked. "A treasure box," Mason said, "for important things." Lily's eyes narrowed. "Like what?" Mason thought for a second, then said, "Like your rabbit, or a rock you like, or a note from your teacher. Things that matter because you say they matter." Lily took the box slowly like it might bite. She opened it. Inside was a smooth stone painted blue with a tiny white sailboat. Her mouth parted. "You painted that," she said. Mason's face softened. "I tried." Lily looked up at Ethan, then back at Mason. "I like it," she said, and something in the room loosened. Claire stayed away at first. She kept to her own place, a rented cottage up the road, curtains often drawn. But she did not disappear. She began leaving small things on Ethan's porch, always in daylight, always simple. A loaf of bread still warm. A jar of jam with a handwritten label. A sketch of the lake at dusk done in charcoal, the dock lines clean and careful. Ethan never chased her down. He simply made coffee in the mornings and sat on his dock. Some days, Claire sat on hers, a mug in her hand, staring at the water, as if it could forgive without words. They spoke when they spoke. They left silence when silence was all they had. One afternoon, Lily ran down to the docks with her hair tangled from the play. Ethan tried to comb it and only made it worse. Claire watched for a minute, then called across the water, "Let me." Ethan hesitated. Lily looked at him, hopeful and stubborn. "Please," Lily said. Claire came over slowly, hands open. She sat behind Lily on the dock and worked through the knots with patient fingers. Lily relaxed under her touch, like she had been waiting for that kind of care without knowing it. "I don't like when people yell," Lily said suddenly, voice small. Claire paused, then continued braiding. "Me neither," she replied. "Will you yell at me?" Lily asked. Claire's throat tightened. She took a breath. "No," she said, "not if I can help it." Lily's braid came out neat tight, and Ethan felt his eyes sting at something he could not name. Summer turned the lake bright. The woods filled with green. Mason's laugh came back in pieces, first around Lily, then around Ethan, then around a campfire when the night was warm enough to sit outside without flinching at every sound. Claire began painting again. She hung a canvas in Ethan's living room one day, not asking, just placing it against the wall. It was the dock at sunrise, but different. The wood looked repaired. The water looked calmer. A small figure stood at the end of the dock, a child in a bright jacket, and behind her 2 adult shadows that did not crowd her, just framed her. Ethan stood behind Claire as she looked at it, her hands shaking slightly. "It's not perfect," she whispered. "It's honest," Ethan said. In early fall, Claire asked Ethan to meet her in town. She stood outside a small office building with a sign that read, "Family Services." Her hair was pulled back tight. Her hands were empty. "I want to make it official," she said. Ethan's breath caught Claire. She looked straight at him. "Lily deserves something stable," she said. "Something no one can take away with a signature or a lie." Her voice broke slightly. "If you let me, if Lily wants it. I want to be part of her life in a way that is real." Ethan stared at her, the air between them thick with all the wrongs and all the trying. "We can talk to Lily," he said. They did. In the cabin on the couch, Lily between them with her rabbit in her lap. Ethan explained what it meant in words Lily could hold. Claire kept her hands folded, waiting, not demanding. Lily looked at Claire for a long time. "Do I have to call you Mom?" she asked. Claire's eyes filled. "No," she said, "you can call me Claire, or Miss Hart, or nothing at all until you want to." Lily chewed her lip. "Will you still braid my hair?" Claire's laugh came out wet. "Yes," she said, "every day if you want." Lily nodded once, decisive. "Okay," she said, "you can stay." 3 months later, papers were signed. A judge smiled at Lily and told her she looked brave. Lily nodded, like bravery was something you could wear like a jacket. A year after the morning, the gunshot split the damp air. Autumn painted the lake in orange and gold. Chairs lined the yard near the dock. Mason stood at Ethan's side in a suit that fit, this time his shoulders broader, his eyes clearer. Lily twirled in a dress that made her feel important, scattering petals with a serious expression like the job mattered. Ethan waited at the end of the dock, hands clasped in front of him because he did not trust them to stay still. He glanced up at the cabin window and caught a flash of blonde hair, then nothing. When the music started, Claire appeared at the start of the path with Sheriff Brooks beside her. Brooks looked uncomfortable in a tie, but his face held something like pride. Claire's dress was the color of sunrise, soft and warm against the sharp autumn air. Wildflowers were tucked into her hair, and Lily's work showed in the uneven but earnest placement. Claire walked toward Ethan with steady steps. Her eyes never left his. When she reached him, she placed something in his hand. The old boot print photo now sealed in a small frame beside a new picture of the four of them on the dock. Lily holding her rabbit Mason, smiling like he had always belonged there. Claire's voice was barely above a whisper. From endings to beginnings. Ethan closed his fingers around the frame and looked at her. "You're here," he said. Claire nodded once. "I'm here." The lake moved behind them. The wind lifted the leaves. Lily grinned so wide it looked like her whole face would split in half. And when Ethan took Claire's hand, it felt less like claiming and more like choosing again and again to stay. If you enjoyed this story, hit like and subscribe. Before you go, I would love to know where you are watching from. Drop your city or country in the comments.